guys. Welcome back to Keep It 99, the most edifying podcast in the world. And I'm joined here today with Carine Elias. Thank you for coming onto the podcast.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
So the first thing I'm going to ask you is just tell us more about who you are, a little bit about your life. You got it.
Okay, so my name is Carine Elias. I'm 22, going to turn 23 this summer. I go to NC State, and I'm a senior, but I'm going to be graduating next year, doing an extra semester to a year. I'm majoring in psychology, minoring in business administration. Thinking of possibly doing something in the medical field. I'm still looking and researching. With careers, I'm interested in a lot with the brain, especially with psychology, and also business because I love social media and marketing, and I love just doing projects and things like that. So that's why I did business. And I'm president of the Oriental Orthodox Club here, and I'm part of a medical fraternity and just some clubs, Arabic Student Association. I'm in the Debka team. We do Debka, and just involved with the church here, and yeah, pretty much it.
Nice. So we're here today to talk about Coptic Orphans and about you went on a mission trip last summer called the 21, which is a very prestigious mission trip.
Yeah.
So we'll just start with just give me a general, like, what was it like? What did you learn? Just kind of talk about the mission trip, and we'll go from there.
Okay. So the 21 is basically, if you guys know the 21 martyrs, that's behind it. And it's a 3-week trip, gifted trip to Egypt, where you do service trips, and they select fellows from America, the UK, Australia, and Canada. And they select 50, and then the 50 get separated into groups, and then in that groups you go to a site and you do service there. So my group was one of the biggest groups. We had 8 people, and you do every day, you teach kids. You have 2 classes a day. Our group, because we were the biggest one, we had the biggest amount of kids. We had 250 kids. We had a lot of kids. So our day-to-day schedule was basically classes from 9 to 11, first class, and then from 12 to 2. And then after that, we go home, eat, and then we have home visits. So you get to see the kids that you're teaching, and the purpose of it is to teach English, very little English, but that's not really the purpose of the trip. The purpose of the trip is to show love to these kids, because most of them, their fathers passed away, and a lot of them are taking a role bigger than their age, like working or just being in stressful positions because their mom is handling everything, and they're not living like kids. So you are showing them love, and you're playing with them, and we have a lot of breaks. So it's more breaks than playing than it is teaching, but it's just like giving them that love and showing them kindness and showing them ways to love themselves and that people actually care about them, and so they can live like kids. And after that, when we go see the home visits, you get to hear what they're living through, but you don't really know how bad it is until you go see what they're living through. And then you see it, and you see them next day in class, and then you understand a lot of behaviors, you understand why they're in certain ways. But at the end of the day, everything that they are, because a lot of times they told us before we go in training that they're going to be aggressive, or they might be just more, like the way they talk to you is just more like harsh, and just they said don't take it to heart, and you think it's like, oh, it's gonna be fine, but you go there and it is hard and it is aggressive, and sometimes they're not gonna listen to you, and sometimes they don't want to talk to you. But literally within a day or 2 they became kids, because they felt the love from us, and they felt like we actually were there to be with them, and we were there to play with them, and we were there to just enjoy it. And every kid, even the funniest kids and the craziest ones, showed us just how much they cared about us, just like we cared about them. And it was an insane experience. I think anyone age 18 through 23 should apply, because it was like once in a lifetime experience that I've never got to live, even though I've lived in Egypt half of my life. Because you see things that you think people don't go through, but they do. We hear about it, but people are going through this, and people are going through this, and they still have faith, and they still love God, and they still thank Him. And I think through that trip, you just see another side of our faith and another side of Christianity. So.
Yeah, I've been on a few mission trips in my past, and the thing about mission trips that's so striking to me is how the people that have nothing have so much more than nothing. Like, they have nothing physically, but internally, and the joy that they have and that they express towards others and outside is so immense. So how did you, when you went on this trip, how did that kind of affect you, and how has that kind of changed the course of your life since that?
I 100% agree with you. One thing that someone had told me, a previous fellow, that they said, like, you are going to enjoy this, was that when we go do home visits, we get them to pray. Like, the mother prays or the kid. And they were just like, just listen to them. And we did. And like, you had to hold your tears because, like you're saying, we say, thank you, God, for this, thank you, God, for this, but we don't actually realize what we're saying. We don't realize that we can breathe, we can see, we have clothes, we have food and water, da da da. They're saying everything that they're thankful for, and they mean it. And when they're saying it, like the way they are and closing their eyes, and when they're looking up, like you can see it in their emotions, you can see it in how they talk to God. It's this softness and this love that I feel like we say we have, but we don't really have because we don't appreciate every little thing. They appreciate every little thing. And it made us very emotional. I was the most emotional one on my trip. I'm very sensitive, so cried a bunch of times leaving houses just because there's just like, I feel like I got slapped with a reality check. Because like where we stayed, it was very much like a couple of us in a room, and then like the bathroom or the shower, everything was like tiny and like we had to manage. But then we go and see what they're living through, and this is their life. Like, we're here for just 3 weeks on a trip, da-da-da-da. This is their life. They're here 24/7. They live in this room, the 3 or 4 of them. Kids playing, any emotions they're experiencing in front of each other. Like, we have sometimes privacy in our rooms. We have none of that. You're literally living through everything together, and they're okay with it. They're enjoying every little thing. Like, one of my favorite home visits was a mom that had 2 kids. And her girl was in my class, and then her son was still young, so he wasn't in our classes. But she told us that they would always go to the roof and just play and make like little food. And the way she was describing how she's enjoying time with her kids, and her husband passed away, just the little things, I'm looking at her, it's like she doesn't just love her kids, she is making them live the life as if it's luxury, like absolute luxury. And the kids are seeing it as luxury. They come to us and they're like, we made this on the roof. Like, oh my gosh, we're going to bring you. And they brought me a bag to try and to take home to my group. And like, they, not only do they enjoy it, they want you to enjoy it. So something that, I don't know if you got to experience, but like when you go to their houses, they're offering everything to you. Yeah. Like if they have like 10 pounds on them, they're going to get you Pepsi and Sprite with that 10 pounds. And if they can make food, they'll make you food. And they're so happy, and they think it's such a blessing to have you there. And I'm like, we're the ones blessed to have you with us, to see you and to see your faith. And it was just like every time I think about it, it's surreal. Like I feel like sometimes I have to look back on the pictures to kind of remember the feeling I was in, because it really left us at an emotional spot. And I felt like it made your soul feel like it was on fire, like literally on fire. You felt like this presence of God that when we go to church, obviously we feel it, but with them, it was another kind of presence. It felt like it was there everywhere we went. So, yeah.
It almost feels like God is like just like in the air, like he's just in the wind. Like it, no matter where you go, the intensity of which their faith is at such a profound level. And I remember like on my mission trip, I've been to 2, and on both of them, the home visits were like the highlight. Yeah. Because my first one I went to Zambia, and the second one I was in Egypt. Like these people, like I said earlier, they have nothing. Like you think of nothing, and it's like think of nothing as a black, like just like a screen of black. It's like less than that. Like somehow like they like there's not even like a roof. There's not even like barely walls. There's nothing. There's literally nothing, and they somehow want to share everything, and they somehow still want to show that love and show that care and show that, like that they're just like filled with God inside of them. So what I'm kind of wondering is, how has that feeling, now that you're a year away from this trip, you're past it, what are some things now that looking back on that trip kind of struck out to you, or things that you might have didn't realize in the moment, but you realize now? Like, what are some things now that there's some distance between the trip and now that you've kind of realized, like, maybe I should take this aspect, maybe I should take that aspect? What are some of those things?
Like you said, God's presence is everywhere, and I felt like in the trip, people live their life with God. It's not just I go to church on Sunday. And I felt like that was the biggest thing, because I feel like we go to church on Sunday or we go to church on Saturday, and then the rest of the week, we're doing whatever. And yeah, we might pray at night or might pray in the morning, and that's it. There, it's like God is 24/7, like waking up, afternoon, night. And I felt like we felt it in our group, because our site where we served, like the church, was right here, and our site was like right next to it and above it. So like we pass by Abuna every morning and like go in and talk to him and have lunch or breakfast with him. And the people are just living in the church. Like we go in the classes, 2 hours later, come down, they're still here. We go home, come back, they're still here, and they're happy. No one's forcing them. Like a lot of them can just walk home. They're in a living distance where they can walk. They enjoy being in church. And you feel like a biggest thing is that when I came back, I was like, what am I doing? Like, I need to be like either we're serving, or we're in liturgy, or we're in prayers, or we're doing something concerning God. Like everything was God. And even like when we would have time to have fun, or like even have time to just chillax, God was still there. Like we bring God in with us. And even the kids, like they bring up God, and they're 6, 7, 8. Like a lot of the kids here, you see, it's like that's the last thing. Like everyone's on their iPads, and obviously you don't see that there. That's a big thing, is that no technology, and they live the moment. So a lot of them are living like kids, so they have that purity, and they have that like godly, like whenever they talk to us or whenever they bring up God, it's just another feeling that I didn't get to see in the kids here. And I think from that, when I came back, I wanted to be involved more in the church. I wanted to be involved more in my college. That's why we kind of worked on the club here, because we had the club going, but we weren't doing that much. And it was a lot to bring a community all together, because I feel like we had a lot of Copts and Orthodox people in our school, but we weren't really like together or doing things together. And now we have a board, and now we're doing events, and we were able to do a bunch of more things. And I felt like church to me and being that close to God mattered. I needed to, because I felt like having him, like I said, had my soul on fire. I felt like I was so happy, and I felt like I've done other things. Like the crazy thing was right before this, I did a study abroad in Spain. So I got to go from Spain to one of the lowest areas in Egypt. And I thought, oh my gosh, the fun in Spain was like the absolute, that's it. Like that's, but that in Egypt was way higher than Spain. Like the happiness I was in and the joy I was in. And it was very much like the purity of it was that we were very tired every day. I don't know about your mission trip, but we were exhausted. Like we would sleep maybe 4 or 5 hours every night, and then we'd have to be teaching and doing all this, and we'd have to be awake with the kids because they have energy. And then we'll have Shay, and then we'll keep going. Like we were wired, and I felt like that made me want to, like I was saying, be more involved and just have that connection here with God.
There's a few things you said. There's actually 3 of them that I really like. The first thing is that how you said how the kids like almost lived at church. I was talking to Jerome yesterday on the podcast, and he was talking about how when he lived in Egypt, like that was his life. Like he was in church 24/7. Like that, like church was just the place to be all the time. I feel like here in America, that's kind of, church is kind of its own thing, and then like life is its own thing. And at the end of the day, we were talking about it, but like you have to pick something. You got to pick something. And at some point in your life, you got to make that decision. So obviously in places like that, that decision is almost already made in the culture and the way how people live. So it's a really beautiful thing that they like stay there. The second thing you said, what was it? You said something about how they were.
I can remind you. What was it about?
It was right after that. It was like the next thing you said.
How
I try to keep it in my mind the whole time.
How they.
What?
That
was the third thing. It's okay. We'll go with that.
Go
like the difference between like the joy that you felt, or like the fun that you had and the happiness you had in Spain versus like the joy of the mission trip. And I think that's where that distinction between happiness and joy comes from. You know, it's like, of course you can go have, of course, like from a fun perspective, like Spain was probably more fun. Maybe not.
No, I get what you're saying.
But like from like just like a pure enjoyment, like it was probably more fun. Yeah. But I dare you to find someone who went on a mission trip that did not enjoy it more than any other experience in their life, because it's completely life changing. And I think that, honestly, in my opinion, it should be a requirement to graduate high school in America, is to go on a mission trip abroad, because I feel like it's the only way for you to really appreciate the humanity that you have, because you see people who all they have is their humanity. That's it. and what they can do with that. And we take not just that, we take so much more for granted, and we're still complaining. We still have things we have, like, oh, I wish I could do this, wish I could do that. But these people who have, for like the 10th time I feel like I've said it today, but who have nothing, they have everything.
They do.
So, I mean, I feel like that's the thing about mission trips that's so powerful, is how that kind of forces you to take a different perspective. So I think that kind of ties into another topic about like self-image, which is, you know, a lot of times we look at ourselves and from two perspectives. I feel like a lot of people fall into the two extremes, is from a very critical perspective, where they look at themselves like, oh, like I'm not good enough, like I'm, you know, all these things. Or they can look at themselves from a very lenient perspective, like, oh, it's okay, like it's whatever, it'll move on, it'll pass. How has the mission trip changed your perspective on your own self-image, if it has in any way?
No, it definitely has. Something related to that about self-image was, in the trip, was we had to, or when we learned about the mission of Coptic Orphans and what they did, because we knew as us going on a mission trip, but we didn't know the specificities of like what they did with the kids, So Coptic Orphans' mission, other than supporting the kids' education, because they fully fund their education and they fully support them and their families, is to work on the kids' self-image. And they said that, but like we didn't truly get to understand it until we were there and we got to see it. So what does that mean? So the kid obviously has a parent missing, so that affects their self-image, because it's like, why did this happen to me, and they're in school, and a lot of times other kids will know this about them, so they'll make fun of them. And I was put in situations, they told us that you're gonna have at least one interaction with a kid where it's gonna affect you and like just put a hole in your heart. And I did have it with one kid. And we went to the houses, and what we saw Coptic Orphans did was that if the kid has any talents or likes to do anything, they book them classes. They work on their talents. They work on things about the kids' abilities so that they start to love themselves, and they talk with them. They have representatives for each section of the kids' housing. And the representative goes and visits them like once or twice a month. They talk to the kids and they make sure they're okay. They check on them. They are aware of how they're doing, like emotionally. And then like one of my girls, she is an artist, and when I went to see her, she had like books of just her art and her drawings, and she told me she likes to do piano, and they allowed her to go to classes. So the kids' self-image, even though something is missing and they feel like there is something, they started to love themselves. They started to feel like I'm loved too. It's not just I love myself. I'm loved, because sometimes they have that part missing, especially with the boys, because it feels like there's a male figure missing in the family, you know? With my self-image, I feel like coming from the trip, like you're saying, a lot of times we're critical, or something that we took was that we complain too much. And we complain about the most minor things here. Like, oh my gosh, the shower got cold too fast. Like, oh my gosh, they didn't do my food right. Like, and I just started to realize this within myself, and I started to realize how much I need to appreciate things, and I need to like things about myself, because the way the kids saw me, like, it was insane. The way they loved us. So not only did we love them, they showed us a different kind of love. They loved us for nothing. Like, we didn't do that much. We just were in class with them for 2 hours a day, would visit them at home only for 3 weeks. And the way they got emotional when we left, the way we all cried at the end, it's as if they knew us for a year or two. And they showed us love that I feel like when we were tired, like literally like messed up like anything we were wearing, just because we all pulled out of bed like very, very, very late. Like we would be running to classes, hair in a bun, no makeup, like everything. And they would come running. As soon as we get upstairs to classes, they'd come running to hug you. And just the, like, as soon as they see you, the joy that comes on their face, I feel like you start to also see the love that God has for us. Because I feel like children's love is like pure love. So you start to think of how God sees us and how we're kids in God's eyes and we're little babies in God's eyes. And the same joy that they had when they saw me is the same joy God has when he sees me or when I talk to him. So I feel like for me, it definitely affected how I see myself, and it definitely affected how I see life as a whole, because I feel like I started to appreciate things. I started to just love a lot of things that I feel like I used to be more critical about, and just I feel like easygoing more, because I think we take things too seriously. There are things that's like, it's okay, it happens. And I feel like it just makes life smoothly, because it's like, okay, it doesn't happen, God didn't mean for it to happen. Like, everything is, God's got it. And it really affects how you see yourself, because, for example, if you don't get into the college you wanted, and you've worked really hard, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not smart enough, I'm God didn't want this to happen, he just has another plan for you. And then they're like, they just go on with their day. They're not going to stress it, they might be upset for a bit, but the trust in God is way beyond anything. So.
You actually reminded me of what I was going to say.
Okay.
and you said something that I was going to say. So,
okay.
But the thing you reminded me of was the point you made about how like their love is like almost equivalent to God's love. And what you were saying earlier was about how like you went to them and they thought like you were such a blessing, but didn't realize realize that you were the one being blessed. And it goes with this like very famous saying that the service doesn't need you, but you need the service. At the end of the day, like there are going to be people who go on mission trips. Like the mission trips are going to get full. You are not important. You are not important to the functionality of the mission, but the mission itself is important to the functionality of you as an individual. And like you said, these kids, the way how they love, the way how they are just so simple. Like it says in the gospel, like Christ says that, be like little children. That's what he means. He says be like little children. He means those types of children, not like iPad kids, like real children who like are simple, because it's the simplicity, it's the innocence. That's what, God desires for us to have for him. Yeah. In the same way, like exactly like you said, how like you feel like how the kids love you is how God loves you. Like that's exactly true. And that's how we're called to love others as well. So I was just going to follow up. I was just going to ask again, like the way how that love was portrayed to you, now that, you're back to your normal life, how have you been able to transform that love that you felt from those kids and portrayed it to others? Because it's very hard to love some people sometimes. So how have you kind of shifted your idea of love, shifted how you love others to kind of fit more of what God's mold of love is?
I really like this question. So how I told you that they told us the kids were going to be tough. So we knew it, but we didn't think how tough they were. So I had 2 boys in my 5th and 6th grade. Like absolute insanity. Like when I say insanity, I mean craziness on craziness. And they pair you up in classes in Coptic Orphans so that there's an Arabic speaker and or they speak a little bit. I spoke Arabic and my partner spoke a bit. And they did not want to listen. They were like very, very hard-headed, and we were tired at times, and they were the second class, so they were the ones from 12 to 2. And we were exhausted by that time. And they'll like come up to you and be like, I'm not listening. And they'll leave out of class. And
sounds like my Sunday school class.
And they sat at the front, and honestly, 2 of my favorites. And I remember, so I had a speaker, like JBL speaker, that we brought to do some fun things with the kids and all that. And I remember they would always try to take it from me or like hold it, And we would try to get them to sit down. And they're like, wait, can I speak in Arabic?
Sure.
Okay, they'd be like, I'm trying to get it. And then they walk out of the class. And I'm like, where are you going? And we have only 2 of us. And I'll go get, and they're like this. And they do not care. And I remember one time I was teaching, they stole my phone from my pocket. And our classes were right next to the Nile. Okay? And he puts his hand out with the phone and looks at me. And I didn't realize he had it. And he goes, I'll throw it. And I go, throw it, and I'm going to throw you with it. And then he was like, fine. And then he gives it back to me. And why I said this example is that you take everything lightly and things just pass. That's what I learned from interactions with like the kids that were very tough. You just have to take it lightly. You just don't overthink it. Like I could have had a heart attack. My phone was 5 feet away from the Nile. Like actually his hand was out. And I was tempting to but I just laughed with him because I knew he was going to give it back to me. I just laughed. and I didn't take it seriously. And that's not me. Usually I'd freak out. But what I learned and what they told us we were going to learn is patience. And I think you have to have patience with people because we're all different. We all have different personalities. We all have been through different experiences, and people are a certain way because of their experiences. Every single one of these kids are either aggressive, violent, anything because of what they've seen at home, in classes, at school. They don't mean to be this way. The people in our classes sometimes are rude to us or something. They don't mean it. They just had a bad experience and they're putting it on us. And I think from my psychology major too, I get to understand this more. But I got to understand that also you have to talk with them and just be with them how they are sometimes, because that's how they understand. So like, for example, if I reacted the way I would have reacted if a kid here did it, it wouldn't have worked. I had to do it the way that he is because he's a jokester, so that he can so it doesn't escalate. And I think sometimes understanding the person in front of you and sometimes understanding how they are or what they're like helps you to interact with them. Like, for example, if someone's just very aggressive with you all the time here and you found out that they went through something in their family recently, just try to take it lightly. Don't take everything they say to heart. They don't mean it. They're just putting it out sometimes. And I think when I think of it, I'm like, how many times is God patient with us? How many times do we make a mistake and then come back crawling like, God, forgive me, I'm sorry. He does. So I learned, and I'm still learning, obviously, that being patient with other people also helps other people be patient with us, because a lot of times we do really stupid things or we say things we don't mean. But yeah, I just had a lot of situations with kids. Like that one thing I told you that like completely like was the highlight of the trip was also something I had to learn from an interaction with a kid, and it was like it escalated and it was violent and we had to handle it, and it showed me just how I need to handle things. So yeah.
What comes to mind when you say that is like when we say in Our Father, forgive us our sins as we forgive those who trespass against us. Mm-hmm. Or forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. It's like the same idea where, like you said, the patience. You have to be able to, not just with kids who are orphans, but in general, you have to be able to, like you said, be patient with people, because everyone's different. And everyone has their own things going on, and you never know what someone's actually going through behind closed doors. And so it's all about being patient and extending that hand of love, extending that grace, extending that forgiveness, the same way that Christ does for us. And that's why I feel like in general when it comes to mission trips is that it really teaches you the life of the apostles. That's what I always think when I think of mission trips is the life of the apostles. Yeah. And it's not about the preaching, it's not about the evangelism. That's a complete second to what you're doing on the mission trips, which I feel like is very striking, because I think a lot of times us back at home we're like, oh, we need to like tell people about Christ, we need to evangelize through, like, you're a head of an Oriental Orthodox club, like through all these clubs and stuff, we need to like bring people to Christ, bring people to the church. And we forget that, how do we do that? It's not by telling them. They already know. It's about showing them, living that out, being that light, being that light on a hill. That's why I feel like how mission trips kind of remind us that that's what the apostles did. The apostles didn't get people by giving grand, massive sermons. If you look at in the book of Acts, chapter 1 or 2, whatever it is in, when St. Peter preaches to the 3,000 and 3,000 people got baptized, the sermon is literally 2 verses long. It is not long at all. It is extremely short, and 3,000 people got baptized. They didn't get baptized because of what he said. Yeah. They got baptized because of what they saw. What they saw Christ in him. They saw Christ in the apostles. Yeah. And so I think it's a good reminder for us that, sure, talking is great, but it's all about doing things. It's all about actually putting the work in, actually living that life with Christ, and so that others can see it. It's not just about talking about it. Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to add was that, like, to understand how some people go through, the thing I was talking about with the kid, we had in one class a huge fight between three boys, and it was our 3rd and 4th graders, like tiny little kids. And we separated our 3rd and 4th grade class because it's huge and it's just chaotic. And my partner came running to me. She was like, they started hitting each other. One person pinned the other person by his neck to the wall, and one person punched. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I had a tactic if there's escalation where we take them to a room and give them a paper and make them crunch it. Like, we just had a whole thing. And I did the whole thing with the 3 of them in one room, and then one of them just started tearing up really, really bad. And as we're talking, and the rest are fine, and then I'm looking at him, and he's trying to like do this so I don't see. And I'm like, okay. So I let the 2 other boys leave, and I'm like, hey, are you okay? Everything okay? He says, I'm fine. I'm like, okay. So we were in the class, and I sat down on the floor. I was like, okay. And I was like, I was going to tell you why I was upset, but if you don't want to tell me, I guess I won't tell you. And I was taking him by his mind. So he comes and sits next to me, and we're just like in silence for like 10 minutes. And he's just like looking at me, and I'm looking at him. And he like calms down. And then he goes, why are you upset? And I was like, oh, I had a headache before classes. I had to take medicine. So I didn't have my full energy with you guys today. And I wanted to be doing all the games, and I was tired. He was like, okay. And I was like, why are you upset? And he was like, I don't like to fight. I never like to fight. And I just get put in situations where I have to fight. And then he completely broke down, and he was like, if my dad was here, if he was here, I wouldn't have had to fight. If he was with me, I would have had a backbone. And like broke down. I'm telling you, someone this big. And I'm an emotional mess. Like I am like, if I see grandparents walking, I'll start crying. So I'm like in a situation where I want to cry. My eyes are already tearing up, and he's like completely broken down. And he's telling me that on his way here, the kids were making fun of him in the bus because his dad passed away. And he was like, I have to protect my siblings in the streets. I have to always fight. I never want to fight. And I just put in the situations, and my dad was a policeman, and he would have protected me, and I would have had like just going. And I'm like in a shock. I didn't train. No one gave me training for this. No one told me what to say in this situation. And then I let him calm down, and I let him say it out, and then I give him a big hug, and I'm like, it's okay. Like I want him to know that it's okay to feel these things, not just because you're a boy, you have to be strong. And I was like, it's okay. And then I let him calm down completely and say everything. And then I promise you, in that moment, whatever I was saying was not me. It felt like actually God was there, because I was so overwhelmed by me crying. I felt like my tears are about to come out. And in the back of my head, I'm like, God, like help. I need help right now. And I remember I was telling him, I was like, okay. I was like I let him say, and I asked him like about what had happened, And then I told him, I was like, do you talk to your dad? And then he was like, what do you mean? I was like, well, right now he's everywhere with you, so you could talk to him anytime. And then he like looked at me, and I was like, ask him for a sign. And then I was like, do you pray at night? And he was like, yeah. I was like, okay, so what are you doing today? And he was the fashionable one of our group. So he'd come all every day with his hair gelled and the t-shirt and the pants. And he was one of my favorites. I'm telling you, he's never gotten emotional. He's like the jokester of the class. Like you would not have, if I had to pick a kid where this was going to come out of him, I'd not pick that kid. And I told him, what are you doing? He said, after this, I'm going to go home, shower, eat, go to church, then come back, and then spend time with my mom, and then pray and sleep. I said, okay. So I told him, I said, this is something that's bothering you. Why don't you pray to God and talk to your dad about it at the same time? And ask him for a sign. Ask him to tell you, like, I want to feel you with me right now. I'm overwhelmed. I'm scared. This is bothering me, and I felt like if you were with me right now, I would feel better. And I don't know what confidence I had in me to say that. And then the confidence was that I said, come to me tomorrow and tell me what you saw. What was I think? I don't know what I was thinking. And and then he was like, it felt like a challenge to him. He was like, okay. He's like, okay. And I told him, I was like, this is going to be our little secret. I was like, you're going to come to me tomorrow and tell me, I need to tell you something. I have to go and then I'll come with you, and then to this room, and you're going to tell me what you saw. And then he was like, okay. And then the whole class had left, and he was late. So he told me, he put his little book back on, and he was like, okay. And he was so excited, and then he left. As soon as he left, I'm bawling, and then my whole group came and like just handled the situation. And I was telling one of my fellows, I'm like, I told this, but I don't know. What if he comes tomorrow and he tells me he didn't see anything? But I didn't really worry about it. Like, at the moment, I was just, like, overwhelmed, but I wasn't really worried about it. I didn't think about it. Next day, we're playing da-da-da, and at the end, he comes to me. He's like, I need to talk to you. I'm like, okay, so we go. And he's like hyper, okay? He's like himself. I'm like, okay, what? Tell me what you saw. He was like, you're not going to believe what happened. You're not going to believe it. And I was like, tell me. And then he was like, I was walking to, when the bus dropped us off, I was walking. And in the area where we were in, there's a lot of like palm trees. What's the possibility of seeing a palm tree on the floor?
Like laid down on the floor?
Like fallen on the floor. A palm tree.
In Egypt?
In
not
Egypt.
very high.
Okay? I'm telling you, this kid had very, very, like, he's very brave for what he asked, okay? So he saw a palm tree on the floor. And he said, Dad, if you're with me, show me another palm tree on the floor. I need to see another one. And this kid is this big. He's like 7. And I looked at him. I was like, another palm tree? I was like, there's already one on the floor. And then I was like, what happened? He was like, I'm walking. And then I went to another place. And then when I was walking by, there was another palm tree on the floor. And I had been in the areas he's been. I've never seen a palm tree on the floor, okay? So I'm shocked. And then he was like, I'm not done. I was like, oh, so where? I was like, oh, so where? So we were talking a lot with Dad last night. And he was like, I went to church and I came back. And he was like, at night before I sleep, I pray. And then he was like, in our, where they live, there's like a big window by his room. And he said, in the morning and like in the afternoon, there's a lot of birds that fly by. Sometimes they stop. And he said, at night, you don't see any birds. You don't.
Yeah, of
I
course.
was there. You don't. And he was praying. And he said, Dad, if you're with me, let a bird come and stand on the window. And a bird came and stood on the window. And he's telling me this, and I think the purity of his, like, how old he is, I don't think he realizes how crazy, and I'm over here, like, sitting in front of him, and I'm looking at him, and I can't believe what he's saying. Like, I'm like, and I'm so happy, but I'm like, what? And I can see just how much joy that brought him, and how much it rebooted him back to how he was feeling before he broke down. But I think, going back to what you're saying, sorry, it was long, but the innocence of having a child's love with God is that you're able to have this relationship. You're able to have direct contact. Like, he was able within one day, within a couple of hours, to see 2 signs from his dad. And even though he was overwhelmed by emotions, and it's so okay to be overwhelmed by emotions and feel these things and talk to God about it, God helped him gain back his peace and helped him calm down. And I think I wouldn't have been able to see this about this kid because he's the jokester of the class. He's funny and he has a confidence with the kids. Like, one kid was telling him, oh, like, you're wearing pants like me. He was like, wearing pants like me? I bought these last year. Like, he's very sassy, he's very confident, and he doesn't show any signs of weakness. But when he showed that aggression and I was confused by it and I understood why, I began to understand the whole thing. And that's what a lot of people we interact with on a daily basis, we don't know, and a lot of times they won't tell us what they're going through. But what if they're seeing something like this at home, or something with their friend group, or friendships, or anything? So yeah.
That was a great story. I have a few things to say about that. First thing is, just because you just mentioned it just now, they always say like the funniest people always have like the most trauma, which I find is very interesting. We can talk about that in a second when we finish the rest of this.
Yeah.
But you said something about how you felt like when you were talking to the kid initially, how you almost didn't feel like it was you talking, how you felt like it was God talking through you. And that, the same way how that, like, the innocence of a child is that pure love of God, when you interact with that pure love of God, it brings you down to that same level of innocence, and it allows you to really take on the real action when Christ says, like, don't premeditate what you say, when Christ says, like, have full faith, you know, just be a vessel. At the end of the day, you're just a mouth and a tongue. That's it. It's him speaking the whole way. And I feel like that's something in mission trips that, I'll insert a little story here.
No.
My first mission trip, I was in Zambia. I was 14 at the time, right? 14. I was 14 at the time. And so I was obviously very young. I was one of the youngest ones on the trip. It was me and one other kid. And so the first day we're there, we're doing house visitations, bright and early. First thing, like I'm like still like confused like where I am, and like we're doing visitations. Like we got in at 2 a.m. They let me oversleep through prayers and stuff, and they said, get up, get in the car, we're going to visitations. So like zero preparation.
Okay.
And they're like, okay, from the beginning, like, we walked out the car, and they told me, in 5 houses, you're going to be the one talking. Beautiful. Perfect thing to tell a 14-year-old kid who has just gotten off a 25-hour flight from Atlanta to, not 25, it was 17 hours, from Atlanta to Johannesburg and then to Zambia. Perfect. So I'm sitting there, and I'm like, there's no way I can say anything. And I have a Bible, and 14-year-old Isaiah doesn't really read the Bible, hasn't really read the Bible in years. You know, it kind of goes around his day-to-day life. So I had no clue what to open, so I had no clue what to say, I had no clue what to do. And I'm just listening to these people, the first 4 houses. They go, it's your turn. So I shot a real prayer real quick, and I was like, just open something. I opened the Bible, and I opened to Isaiah, I think it was 60, Isaiah chapter 60, verse 10 and 11. The verse is about a bridegroom and a bride, and how the bridegroom adorns the wife with jewels and stuff, talking about God and us as humanity. Obviously, I didn't know that. But I open it up, I read the verse, and then like I just like go quiet because I thought like that's all I had to do. And they're like, no, like give them like words of encouragement. I could not tell you what I said. I could not tell you how I came up with it. But somehow I was able to explain the verse and give them something, say something, I don't know. And then they were like, pray. And I was like, okay. And I just prayed, whatever. Like, and then at the end of it, they're like it was, the feeling I had was just like, that was not me. That's not who I am. Like that wasn't me doing that. Yeah. And I'm a big talker, and all I do is talk. That's all I do with my whole life. But the rest of that day, I don't think I said another word to someone, because I was just so in shock of like what had happened and what had occurred. So that like kind of just reminded me of that. And it's like, it's really true that when you have, and it shows us like I didn't know what to do. I was so lost. I had nothing to do. Like, and I was scared. Like I was like not gonna, you know. But when you just put it at God's feet and just say, it's up to you. Your will be done. His will is done. If you really mean that prayer, you really mean it when you do that. So I think, you know, that's one thing. And then the last thing was about how you're talking about how the kid, you know, put together, like what I like to say is like put together the puzzle pieces of God's voice. Right? God's voice is always there. Like you said, he's around you 24/7. But it's about taking the things that you see around you and putting that puzzle together, putting those pieces of the puzzle together to see that full picture of what God's word is to you. You know, like people always say like, oh, but God doesn't talk to me. Like he's always reaching out, but it's, do I open my ears? Do I look around? Do I put together that puzzle? Or do I just sit around and go, oh, God hasn't appeared to me and told me straight to my face what to do? Well, of course not, you know? So I just think like, that was interesting. Reminded me of a couple of things from back in Zambia.
No, I know exactly. Like I remember after or during the talk with the kid, I felt like I really didn't know what to do, because you know a lot of people will be like, oh, I'm sorry, like it'll get better. He didn't need that, because he's heard that. And I remember like after, why I broke down is because I was like, who was this speaking? Like that's not like, I was having full faith when I was saying it that he was going to come tomorrow and tell me something. Like I wasn't even scared that he wasn't. But later I was like, what if he comes? But at the moment, and because it was such like a private conversation, like there was no other kids around us, no other fellows, it was just me and him in a room, and I had to be the one to do something. And God really always is with us, like you're saying. It's like we think he's not there, we think he doesn't just appear and say something to me, but he is. And I feel like at the time I felt like the words that came out were just thoughts that I was getting, and then it was coming out without me thinking. And I feel like when you also have that trust with God that he will control situations and control things, you will feel his presence. You just have to be willing to see it and be willing to just accept that he's always at the door. He's just knocking.
Of course.
You just have to open it.
And it's that boldness that I think is 100% from the Holy Spirit. Like that boldness in that moment, or that boldness in whatever moment it is in your life where you feel like, no, God is with me. Like there's no doubt about it. That's that boldness that St. Peter had. That's the boldness St. Paul had. It's the same boldness. It's not different. Like they say, like, you know, how can we be great? Like Elijah was a great man. Elijah had the same nature as us. I don't know where that says that in scripture, but it says it somewhere. I think St. Paul wrote it. But the point being is that, like, we look at all the saints of our church. We look at all the great servants. We look like Abuna Bishoy Kamel. We look at Habib Girgis, all these great people in the history of the Coptic Church, and we go, I could never do that.
Yeah.
Sucks to suck, but you can do that, right? It's all about, putting on that faith and just leaving it at the feet of God.
Mm-hmm. You know what's crazy is when I applied to Coptic Orphans, I had also applied to an internship, and I needed to do an internship that summer because it was like I'm going into my senior year, I hadn't done one. And I got an internship before I got the acceptance from Coptic Orphans, and it was a good internship with good pay stuff. And I remember I prayed to God, I said, God, if it's your will, let me get accepted into this mission trip, and I will do it, I won't do the internship. And I remember it had literally been like a week apart when I found out. And right before it, a lot of fellows from before were like, oh my gosh, this person didn't get in. This person didn't get in. This person didn't get into the trip. And I'm like, oh, I guess I'm going to do the internship. And then I got the email. And I felt immediately when I saw the email, I felt like God wanted me to go. And I didn't think I was going to be ready because, like you're saying, when you go on these mission trips,
there's no way to be ready.
There isn't. And you do training, and it's still not.
It doesn't matter. Like even if you did a mission trip before.
Yeah. And you've been on a couple.
Yeah. So I did one when I was 14, and I did one last summer I was 18.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Even 4 years of high school, doesn't make a difference. No matter, nothing will prepare you for the moment where you sit in a house with someone who has nothing, and they just don't have anything, and they don't know what to say, and they don't, they feel like God has completely left them, and at the same time they still have full faith in God, and it's nothing will prepare you for that, no matter how many times you see it, because it's like the purest form of humanity. It is like flesh and bone, and that's it.
You know what's crazy about saying that they're how did you say it? You said that they have full faith, and they also
they feel like God's left them, but they still have full faith in God.
So with that, something that really I just remembered, I completely forgot. I was the Abuna in our site, one of the best Abunas. Shout out to Abuna ever, Abuna Arsanios. Just the way he is, I felt like I was seeing full image of Christ, how he is with all the issues, and that's a whole other topic. But anyway, me and him were talking about something, and I asked him if I could talk to him privately about something, and we were talking. And Abuna, when he's everywhere, someone will just come to him with an issue. It doesn't matter if he's talking to someone or anything. They just come. And we were talking, and this lady comes up to him. And she was like, Abuna, something I think had happened with her daughter. And she's like, she's still sick. Nothing is getting better. And why is God leave? This is all in front of me. And I'm just sitting there. Why did God leave me? Why did he leave her? Why has he forsaken her? We didn't do anything to deserve this. We didn't do any. She just, and I'm shocked. I'm just sitting there shocked, and Abuna just does a little prayer, and she goes. And she almost broke down, very quickly. It was not even 5 minutes. And I'm like, Abuna, do you need to go? I don't know what to do. And he smiles, and he was like, you want to know something? Because I was asking him before how he handles this much issues in the church and this much issues in the community, and how he's happy. I was like, how do you do this? How do you have this much joy in you, and there's issues surrounding you 24/7? Literally walking, I don't think he walks down the street without an issue coming his way.
Of course.
Okay? He was like, what's crazy is that you see how she was complaining right now. He was like, she's going to come to me in a couple hours, and she's going to say, I didn't mean what I said. I love God, and I know he loves me, and I was just upset. And she will go and be so ashamed for complaining about the issue she's going through because of how much she loves God. This was just out of upsetness. And he was like, it's okay to be like this, but he's like, the people here will complain and then feel ashamed to complain. They feel ashamed to complain about her daughter being sick. And he told me the family problems in Sicily, her daughter basically became paralyzed and been in the bed for a year or two, and then I think her son or her cousin passed away. Everything was going bad. And he tells me they will come confess, and they will go pray to God and say, I'm sorry, thank you for everything you've given me, and thank you for everything you haven't given me. It's your mind doesn't quite grasp it until you see it, like you're saying. We say these things. It still doesn't grasp it when you see it. Thinking back at it, I just couldn't imagine how she can go back and feel bad for what she said, because everything she was saying, I felt it, and I'm not even in her situation. I felt the pain in her voice, but she loves God so much that she knows even if takes today, takes tomorrow, he's there. He's always there with her. But it's okay. We're human. We're not robots. We feel these things, even if we have trust in God.
And you just think about all the things that we complain about on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Like from this morning until now, the amount of things I've complained about and what that has to, like what that means in reality versus the things that they complain about are so much more in magnitude, and they still feel ashamed to complain about it. And I'm complaining like it's nobody's business.
Yeah.
You know? So I think that's why regular mission trips in general are just like getting out of your, you don't even have to go on a mission trip, but just serving people in your community who need to be served. Even that has enough to kind of put yourself back into perspective and realize I'm just a speck of dust on this planet.
Yeah.
I'm just a speck of dust in God's hand. I'm nothing. You have to, I feel like that's the biggest, for me personally, the biggest takeaway from the mission trips and from service in general is that I am nothing.
Yeah.
That's the biggest takeaway.
Absolutely nothing.
Exactly. So I think that's kind of, the main takeaway.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also, and while I'm absolutely nothing, he loves me.
Of course.
And and we still, like you're saying, we come back from these mission trips too, and we sometimes fall into habit. Like we would always, in my group, we stayed in contact until now. Like we're trying to plan a summer reunion, and we were all going through like a crisis when we came back. Because we were like, I feel like I can't function because I felt like so close to God, and now I don't feel, like I feel like I want to be there. I want to go back.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. When we were there, we were going through a lot, and we come back to luxury. I remember one thing that like struck out to me was like opening the sink and seeing the pressure of water coming out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just having hot water.
Yeah. For me, the crazy part was I remember in Zambia, the bathroom was like you walk in, toilet, sink, like you're sitting on the toilet, the sink's right here, shower.
We had the same
So
thing.
to take a shower, you have to sit on it. Like,
yeah.
I mean, you can't really stand. You got to like basically sit on the toilet. And I lived like that for 2 weeks. I remember like coming back and walking into my bathroom and just seeing a shower, and I was like, this is crazy. Like this is even the airport toilet was nicer. Like or the airplane toilet was nicer. And it's like you just like walk back into your house and you're like, I can't live anymore.
Like why do I deserve this? You know?
Of course.
Like you feel this double reality hit because it's like one of the biggest things for me when I went to church the first time after I came back, I had to leave from how much I was crying, seeing the kids, because when we went to church there, all the kids were barefoot, and they were in their pajamas or they're wearing things that are all cut up, but they're still happy in church. Something I don't know if you got to feel it or you got to see in the churches over there, the churches are so alive. Like when we were in liturgy. Everyone is speaking from their heart.
Of course.
It's insane.
And I even think there's certain places in America where I feel that way when I go.
Yeah.
Like Nashville.
No,
especially specific churches within Nashville. Churches that are more, what's the word? That are more, I'll say Egyptian.
Okay, yeah.
Are, like, you just feel the, you feel the spirit. Like I went to the convent on Saturday before I came. And they had there's a group from Nashville that does service for like nursing homes, and once a year they take the people from the nursing homes, bring them to the convent for like a weekend, for retreat. I remember I'm standing there as a deacon. Every 3.5 seconds, someone comes with a paper full of prayers, prayer full of prayers, or paper full of prayers, paper. Abuna, sitting on the altar, there's like a pile of prayers, and so we get to like the part of liturgy right before the confession. Where he's reading all the prayers right after the fraction. And we're sitting there in silence for like at least 20 minutes because he has to sit there, open the paper, next one. And we're just sitting there just waiting. And it's just like the sheer like faith that these people have that their prayers are going to be answered. The sheer faith they have. Like even in America, like you can still see that. Yeah. But yeah, it's like the church is just so alive. It's like even though the church itself also has nothing with the people, it's got more than, we have churches here that have multiple buildings and have basketball courts and have fields and have all these things. And it's like they have people and they have people that pray and actually pray and, really sing the praises and put the, go to every single day, every single hour, every single minute. So it's a big difference. But
and you see them there literally every day. Like
every second, every day.
I come the next day and they're there. They're still there, and something that I saw that struck out to me was, like, obviously sometimes when we pray we close our eyes, but I would see that they're closing their eye and you can feel the emotion with their facial features as they're looking up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they see something, or it's like
I overheated. Sorry, keep
they
going.
or they like fully are like, even though there's people around them, they're having that talk with God. They're there with God. And I remember the first liturgy, like all of us girls were and you look and everyone's crying. All of us are crying as we're looking around, because we can't fully like understand how, because you're not just knowing what they're living like, you're seeing it in what they're wearing, and you're seeing some of them have dirt on them all over them, and they're happy, they're alive, the church is alive, and they don't see any of that. And something too is that, like, you know, sometimes when people go to church, it's like, oh, what do I wear, no one's even thinking of that over there.
Yeah.
Like, that's not even a thing. And no one looks at each other as like what they're wearing. They're there, whatever they're wearing, they're there for Christ. They're not there for anyone else at the church. So that was a big thing, yeah.
That's all I got. You got anything else?
I think that's it.
All right. Well, thank you, Carine, for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, guys. Please apply to Coptic Orphans.
Yeah,
Please
for
apply.
sure. I'll put the link down in the description. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and see you guys next week. Thank you.